The studio of The View buzzed with the kind of energy that only a live television broadcast could generate. Audience members were already seated, some leaning forward in anticipation, whispering excitedly to their neighbors about today's guest. The air was thick with expectation. Al Pacino, the legendary actor whose career spanned decades of unforgettable performances, was about to appear live on stage. Across from him, Joy Behar, the veteran co-host known for her sharp wit and biting commentary, adjusted her microphone and leaned forward in her chair, flashing her characteristic smirk. She had interviewed countless celebrities over the years, some brash, some evasive, some delightfully unfiltered, but few carried the reputation and gravitas that Pacino brought into the room. The cameras rolled, capturing every detail of the vibrant set, the polished desks, the audience seating, and the lights that reflected off the colorful decor. Pacino entered with a quiet intensity that seemed to draw the entire room's attention to him instantly. He wore a simple black suit and shirt, understated yet commanding, with a presence that seemed to shrink the space around him despite the expansive studio. His dark eyes scanned the room, briefly acknowledging the crew and audience before settling on the co-hosts. There was an aura of calm authority, a subtle energy that demanded respect without a single word being spoken. Joy Behar leaned forward, her tone playful yet probing. "Al, it's so great to have you here today. You've given us some of the most iconic roles in film history, from gangsters to rebels to heroes, and people are always curious. After all these years and all this acclaim, do you ever feel misunderstood by the public?" Pacino's gaze fixed on her for a long moment, his eyes intense yet controlled. The room seemed to hush slightly, as if the energy had been drawn into that moment of silent appraisal. When he spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, and measured, yet it carried an unmistakable edge. "Misunderstood, perhaps. People will always see what they want to see. That is inevitable. What matters is the work, the truth of the performance, the integrity of the craft. Everything else is noise." The audience shifted, leaning in with interest. Crew members exchanged knowing glances. It was clear that this interview would be far from ordinary. Joy, sensing an opening, leaned in slightly with a playful glimmer in her eyes. "Of course, Al, but you've made choices that have stirred up conversation over the years. Some love them, some, not so much. Do you ever think about what people say about your career, your choices, the risks you've taken?" Pacino's jaw tightened ever so slightly, and his voice, still calm, now carried a sharper undertone, signaling a rising edge of intensity. "Do I think about it? No, I think about the work. The craft, the authenticity of every role, every scene. The opinions of others don't guide me. I can't let them. That would mean compromising who I am and the art I practice." The audience murmured softly, some gasping, some nodding in admiration. There was a tension in the room, subtle yet palpable, the kind that could only occur when two strong personalities collided on live television. Joy, ever quick to adapt, tried to recover her usual humor, a gentle teasing lilt returning to her voice. All right, I hear you. But surely, with all the intensity you bring to your roles, fans might think there's a barrier between you and the public. Don't you ever worry that people see you as unapproachable?" Pacino leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes locking on her with a steady intensity that made even seasoned professionals in the audience take notice. "Unapproachable, maybe, but it is better to be real than to be liked for a lie. If people see me, they see what I am. If they are intimidated or uncomfortable, that is their problem. I am not here to be liked. I am here to be true to the work and to myself." The audience stirred again, murmurs of agreement spreading through the rows. Crew members behind the cameras whispered to one another, impressed by the sheer force of presence Pacino exuded without ever raising his voice. Even Lorraine Kelly, observing quietly from the side, tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the intensity of the moment. Joy, now slightly off her usual rhythm, attempted to pivot, her tone more conciliatory, though her curiosity remained sharp. "I understand, Al, I really do, but isn't part of being in the public eye answering questions, sharing some personal perspective? People are genuinely interested in the person behind the films." Pacino's eyes never wavered from hers. His voice remained calm, precise, but the intensity behind it made the air in the studio feel charged. Answering questions is one thing. Being reduced to speculation, assumptions, or trivial commentary is another. "I will speak on what I choose, on my work, on meaningful experiences. I am not here to entertain curiosity disguised as critique. That line, crossing it, is not acceptable to me." The audience reacted with audible murmurs and a ripple of applause. Some whispered excitedly to each other, noting the rare moment when a living legend asserted himself with such calm authority on live television. The crew exchanged impressed looks. This was not a moment of simple celebrity banter, it was a demonstration of personal boundaries, of the power of presence and self-respect. Joy leaned back slightly, blinking, her expression a mix of surprise and newfound respect. She had faced countless sharp personalities, but Pacino's steady intensity and unflinching stance left her momentarily speechless. She attempted a softer, more measured approach. I hear you, Al. And I appreciate your honesty. But sometimes we need to push boundaries in live television, to get an authentic story. Surely that's fair. Pacino's gaze softened fractionally but retained its edge. Pushing boundaries is only fair when it respects the person on the other side. Disrespect, assumptions, or attempts to provoke are not boundaries. They are oversteps. That is the distinction I live by. I will answer truthfully, or I will remain silent. That is my choice, not yours to challenge. The audience responded immediately with stronger applause, some standing, others clapping, the tension in the room now transformed into admiration. Crew members nodded, aware that the segment was destined to go viral, that clips of this commanding moment would circulate widely online. Social media buzzed even as the cameras continued rolling, capturing Pacino's calm, unyielding authority, and the rare sight of Joy Behar, normally quick with a retort, rendered momentarily speechless by his presence. Pacino leaned back in his chair, allowing the silence to speak for itself. The studio seemed to vibrate with the quiet power of his words, the intensity of a man who had spent decades mastering his craft and commanding respect without raising his voice. Joy, recovering slightly, offered a tentative smile, acknowledging the power and clarity behind Pacino's stance. The studio lights brightened once again as the cameras returned from a brief commercial break. The audience, still buzzing from the first intense segment, shifted in their seats, leaning forward in anticipation. Whispers and murmurs circulated as viewers tried to guess what would happen next. Harrison, no, Al Pacino, sat across from Joy Behar with a quiet intensity that seemed to fill the room. His presence alone commanded attention, and there was a sense that the segment was no longer just a celebrity interview, it had become a lesson in authority, respect, and personal boundaries. Joy, regaining some of her usual composure, leaned forward again, trying to steer the conversation back toward her control, though her smile was now tinged with caution. All right, Al, she said, her tone lighter than before but with a subtle edge, let's talk about something a bit more personal. Fans always want to know what drives you off-screen. How do you stay grounded with such a monumental career? You've been through Hollywood's highs and lows, and people are genuinely curious about the man behind the movies. Pacino's eyes narrowed fractionally, and a subtle tension flickered across his features. His voice, deep and steady, carried both calm and a latent intensity that immediately hushed the murmuring audience. Grounded, he said deliberately, isn't about what people see. It's about honesty, discipline, and choosing what matters. The work itself keeps me grounded. The craft, the truth of the roles, and the people I collaborate with. Not the applause, not the criticism, not the attention. The audience murmured again, sensing the rising tension. The atmosphere in the studio was electric, each word carrying weight, each pause heavy with anticipation. Joy, sensing both the opportunity and the risk, leaned closer, trying to maintain her playful probing while hiding the slight unease in her expression. I hear that, Al, I really do. But don't you think there's a responsibility when you have so many fans? When people admire you, don't you ever feel the need to explain yourself a little more, to give them insight into your choices? Pacino's jaw tightened, a flicker of controlled anger passing over his features. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking onto hers, unwavering and intense. Explain myself. To whom? To people who project their ideas, judgments, and expectations onto me. No, I answer to the work, to the truth of the moment, to the integrity of the performance. That is all. People are free to interpret or criticize, but I will not bend myself to satisfy arbitrary curiosity or assumptions. That is not respect, it is intrusion. The audience reacted immediately. Soft gasps, whispers of astonishment, and scattered applause rippled through the studio. Crew members behind the cameras exchanged impressed glances. This was no ordinary interview. Even veteran hosts understood that moments like this were rare, a living legend asserting boundaries with calm authority, leaving the usual power dynamics completely inverted. Joy's smile, though still present, faltered slightly, betraying the realization that Pacino was fully in control of the narrative. Trying to maintain a semblance of her usual energy, Joy adjusted her posture and attempted a conciliatory tone, though there was a hint of hesitation in her voice. "Al, I wasn't trying to provoke you. I just want people to understand the person behind the legend."